The latest iPhone has been launched to the masses, and I'm guilty of being part of this annual ritual of spending a ton of money just to get my hands on the latest and greatest iPhone. Although I do have an excuse as I'm a YouTuber, my job is to make sure to thoroughly review these phones and help you make an educated buy for yourself. Welcome back to my channel I call Technologically Curious. We are about to unveil the only exclusive features, but as I like to call it, reasons why you would want to consider going pro if the latest iPhone has been on your mind. But before I get started, here's a quick and sweet piece of advice. If you are already thinking of getting an iPhone and you're looking for something different, always, and I mean always, consider the Pro. Apple loves to pack all their wow factors and notable features of their iPhones in their Pro versions. iPhones that are non-Pro usually get upgrades introduced in last year's Pro models, while the Pro versions get something totally new. So stick around as I show you the new iPhone 14 Pro in all its glory. Everybody has been talking about Dynamic Island, especially since Apple, if you notice, devoted one full ad just for it. Last year, if Apple were to tell you that they're going to release a new feature called Dynamic Island, you would be like, what? It's a very interesting name that definitely lives up to it, but what is it truly all about? Dynamic Island is a Pro-only feature and is ultimately the biggest change on iPhones yet. The notch you have been used to seeing is now replaced by a bubble that comes to life, which I will get to in a bit. The notch has been on iPhones for almost 5 years now, so this can actually be a good year to change to a new iPhone with a new notch. As a matter of fact, this will be something entirely different even for Android users. This is not just a hyped feature that Apple released. Other phone manufacturers surely haven't thought of it, as they have been focused on better looking notches as per design. The Dynamic Island isn't just aesthetically different, but also fully functional through software that makes something that is a protrusion to the screen be an added value to the user experience. At first glance, it looks like it's just a better redesigned notch with a fancy name, but if you look through it, you will realize how useful and practical it is to a user. The front camera lens and other sensors used for Face ID unlock are merged with black pixels into a pill-shaped design at the top. From face unlock animation to a pop notification when the AirPods are connected, to showing details of calls made through WhatsApp, or even controlling music while you're doing something else on your phone, there are so much more features that the Dynamic Island offers. It transforms into different sizes depending on what is running in the background while you're interacting with other apps on your screen. In my opinion, this is definitely brilliant. You know very well that Apple rarely makes drastic changes to the appearance of their phones each and every year, but there is always something to be excited in their softwares. This year, double your excitement as the iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max offer the Dynamic Island. I have been using the iPhone 13 Pro, and switching to the iPhone 14 Pro obviously won't take me by storm, but the Dynamic Island feature has surely given me a big reason to enjoy my new phone. It's like having a whole new iPhone, and it is. If you are using the iPhone 12 or older phones, or have never used a high refresh rate screen before, the 14 Pro is a big reason to upgrade. Even if you are used to a phone with a high refresh rate, there's simply no going back. And so the Pro it shall be. The screen interaction is smooth as always on the Pro. iPhones have historically been known to produce a smooth touch experience, so imagine how much better it got after adding ProMotion to it, which is Apple's fancy way of calling it a high refresh rate screen. The phone screen is able to change its refresh rate from 1Hz right up to 120Hz, depending on the content on the screen. If you are scrolling through videos on YouTube, the screen will refresh at 120Hz. If you're playing a YouTube video, then the refresh rate will be lowered to preserve more battery life. A high refresh rate screen usually consumes more battery power, and Apple is helping you save it for future use while still enjoying your current activities. Another feature has come to iPhone 14 Pro, and it's called Always On Display. It's a Pro-only feature, and honestly, it's a little strange to me why they have made this feature exclusive. expensive. The iPhone 14 and the 14 Plus are sadly exempted to it. However, always on display is part of the recent iOS 16 release, which by the way makes Apple the latest manufacturer to introduce the feature, as it has already been a decade after it was introduced by Nokia back in 2010. But of course, when Apple decides to put its mind into something, you know very well that they will do a great job at it. With the always on display, you can customize your lock screen to its full potential. This feature allows you to customize the date, appearance of the time clock, and add widgets that are most helpful to you, like the calendar, weather, or reminders. And these can all be accessed right from your lock screen. But if the always on display is not your cup of tea, or you prefer to preserve more battery instead, you can just turn it off from the settings. But honestly, why? Don't do it. Apple will always have its best camera system on the Pro, and that's already a well-known fact. If you are particularly someone who loves a pro level performance from a camera phone, just go for the Pro. The iPhone 14 Pro comes with a 48 megapixel main camera that allows you to take raw photos in outstanding details. This year, you also get a 4th zoom option through the telephoto lens. This includes 3x, which is only available on the Pro, and the 2x zoom that is even better than last year's 13 Pro and definitely superior to the 14 non-Pro versions. The 2x zoom basically crops the photo using its superior 48 megapixel lens to give you better quality photos. For a professional content creator, the iPhone 14 Pro is the right phone on your track. You can take ProRes video footage at 4K with 30 FPS. Make sure to have at least 256 gigs of storage on your phone if shooting ProRes is your thing. Additionally, the front camera lens also has the capacity to produce ProRes footage. So those vloggers and Instagram pros out there, this one's for you. The Pro also offers a feature called Action Mode. Now this is a super cool feature and ultimately another reason to go Pro. It's like basically having a phone on a gimbal without experiencing the headache of carrying an accessory. By default, the camera will always use the ultra-wide lens at 0.5 zoom. You will have the option to capture the footage in 1080p or 2.8K. All of these amazing camera features in a single phone, only on the iPhone 14 Pro. Another notable upgrade that you will experience with the 14 Pro is the better screen that produces a crazy 2000 nits of peak brightness outdoors. If you're someone who loves outdoors just like me, you're really going to appreciate the extra brightness for improved visibility. A16 Bionic chip. Every year Apple releases a new chip, and this year it's reserved only for the pros. Apple claims that the phone's performance is superior to its predecessor. When you compare the bandwidth between the GPU and the CPU, it has increased by 50% while consuming 20% less power than its previous iteration. But sometimes it's really hard to rate the performance of a new chip and say it's worth upgrading for just that feature. The A15 Bionic chip was already commendable for its speed, which is now inside the regular iPhone 14. But I like to believe these incremental bumps in chip performance will only help the phone continue performing well as it ages, and I'm all for it. Obviously, we all live for phones that should have adequate battery life, since everyone's on their phones these days. With the iPhone 14 Pro, you will get 3 hours of video playback than with the regular iPhone 14. So this is surely another plus and another yes for the Pro version. In my experience having this phone for the last 72 hours, I found it seemingly very similar to the iPhone 13 Pro. But take the fact that the iPhone 14 Pro has the always on display feature. This is definitely a great differentiator for me. Anyone would assume that the always on display will just drain the battery's performance, but surprisingly, it doesn't. The A16 Bionic chip that claims to consume 20% less power definitely keeps up to its promises. You just know that no matter what screen-intensive features Apple releases like ProMotion or the always-on display, their phone battery's life will always be optimized to perform better than its predecessors. iPhones in general are just getting better and better, and for those who have older versions, the 14 Pro will be a good step up. With all the features laid down for the iPhone 14 Pro, I would say it's worth it. The additional and useful features create a whole new standard for those who want to upgrade their phones. Are these reasons good enough to buy the iPhone 14 Pro? Or do you prefer to take the regular iPhone 14 instead? Let me know in the comments below. This is Ben from Technologically Curious, and if this is your first time, please make sure to subscribe, as this encourages me to make content like this, especially in the phone season where there are phones coming in thick and fast. And the Google Pixel 7 is the next one that's coming up in a couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that. Until then, take care my internet friends.